door wasn't supposed to open. Matteo Cady had set 3 digital locks, a line of wet towels like a moat, and a playlist labeled "Do Not Forget" that only played dramatic enter-at-your-own-risk music. Yet the universe, being itself, politely disagreed and served him an alien with perky ears and catastrophic timing. Matteo liked showers like he liked his data backups. Thorough, unspectacular, and done in private. His little apartment on the 28th floor of Block C had predictable rhythms. Morning synths, a coffee maker that whistled in the key of sarcasm, and a flock of rubber ducks lined up on a high shelf like judges at a very yellow tribunal. He also had naive faith in basic security protocols, which is to say he trusted his cheap locks until the universe introduced him to Lyris Voss. The knock was polite, like a meter maid with impeccable manners. Matteo, wrapped in a towel and still conducting his steam-swept version of Beethoven, glanced at the door, assumed it was a delivery drone apologizing for the package being late, and stepped out with conscious modesty. The hallway smelled like ozone and 3 different municipal perfumes, which in that city was the olfactory equivalent of a noise complaint. And then she was there. Tall, luminous hair spilling down like river light. Ears that tapered into sharp, expressive points, and a face that, from the corner of Matteo's still half-asleep brain, registered as not human but very fashionable. Her cloak was a handsome thing of woven shadow and practicality. She clutched it like it contained the last rational thought in the universe. Matteo's towel, which had been doing fine as a career accessory, suddenly felt inadequate in the face of interstellar couture. That was his opening line, chosen from a short list of intelligent words that sounded less intelligent when spoken with a mouthful of steam. The sound came out somewhere between apology and the start of a very bad joke. Lyris's eyes, and yes, they were an eye category unto themselves, blinked. She made a noise that could have been a gasp or a laugh, depending on how one classified cross-species phonetics. Her ears flushed a riotous color. It wasn't the human pink of embarrassment. It was more theatrical, like an aurora deciding a dramatic entrance. For a second, Matteo thought she might be an advanced cosplay. Then he remembered that cosplays didn't hum when they breathed. "You're not the roommate my drone logged," she said in the kind of voice that made consonants sound like they were flirting. But the door was open and I thought there was a demonstration of solitude. Matteo laughed, which, in his defense, was an emergency reflex when confronted with an improv alien sitcom. "Demonstration of solitude?" he repeated, because apparently vocabulary had become a group activity. She tilted her head. "You humans have many rituals. Some of them involve water and singing." She offered a smile that might have been apologetic, might have been conspiratorial. "I apologize for the intrusion. My cognitive map misregistered your territoriality. This is my shower," Matteo said, and tried to sound like captain of apartment 28C rather than a used teacup. "There's a towel barricade." He pointed at the wet towels with the solemnity of someone indicating a defensive line. Lyris inspected the towels the way an inspector inspects a foreign currency, with interest and a mild disdain. "Ah, a wet towel moat. Clever. Were you expecting dragons or drone salesmen?" "Mostly drones," Matteo admitted. "And sometimes anxiety." She laughed, the sound like a chime that was allowed to be rude. "Interesting. Where I'm from, anxiety is more literal. It grows teeth." She covered the last word with a hand, a human gesture rendered uniquely charming by the fact that it revealed a ring of small bioluminescent markings along the inside of her wrist. Matteo, embarrassed in a professional capacity, found himself staring at the markings like a toddler at a new toy. "Are you Lyris Voss?" he blurted, because in a world where interns had names that doubled his art movements, it was better to ask than to be awkwardly formal forever. "That depends," she said. "Are you Matteo Cade?" Cooler. He was at least a stable fact in someone else's database. "Yes." "Ah," her ears flicked. "Matteo Cade, the man who makes terrible poetry in the privacy of his own shower." He choked on the word terrible for a second, then allowed himself a crooked smile. "It's conceptually terrible." They stood in the doorway like 2 flags planted on a very small hill. One human, one something else. Both claiming the moral high ground and yet both secretly wanting to get back inside and finish the business of being people. The city outside glowed with neon and weather that smelled faintly of battery acid. Cars moved like fish, quiet and efficient. A maintenance drone winked past and took a long, interested look at their open door as if hoping for plot development. Mateo, in a surge of social competence he did not remember rehearsing, offered the towel over his arm somewhere between hospitality and panic. Lyris accepted it with the dignity of someone who had negotiated a ceasefire with an asteroid and lived to tell the tale. Her fingers were cool and slightly sticky from something that glinted like sugar. "You should probably close the door," she said. "Public showers are not a human cultural export, I recommend." He shut the door. This is the point at which people in romantic comedies pause and reflect, either because the camera wants them to, or because their hearts, being inexplicably cooperative, need a moment to do subtle gymnastics. Mateo, whose heart had a tendency to do interpretive dances without notifying him in advance, felt his pulse take up a jaunty rhythm. "So," he said, attempting nonchalance and failing spectacularly, "what brings you to my moat-covered domain?" She removed the cloak with a flourish that made it seem like it had been hiding multiple lives. "I'm interning at Orbital Fringe Media. I was tracing a misattributed hover ad when my navigation drone insisted upon recalibrating and—" She let the sentence float like confetti and then added, "And obviously I thought there would be a demonstration. I didn't expect a human in a towel." Mateo blinked. "You work at Orbital Fringe Media?" "Yes." She sniffed at the air like someone appraising a vintage smell. "We make things that trend. You make rubber ducks." Her eyes flicked to the top shelf and found the yellow tribunal, bobbing in silent judgment. He bristled and then beamed with disproportionate pride. "They're judges. They look judicial," she agreed. "Very impartial." Conversation, in the romantic comedy manual Mateo had never read but was clearly living, is supposed to proceed in a zigzag from small talk to meaning with comedic detours. They succeeded. She told him about the way interns ate on certain moons, with melodramatic slurping that denoted respect. He told her about the time he tried to microwave basil and nearly started a minor religious movement among his appliances. They traded jokes like contraband, dark, bright, and occasionally tacky. There was an ease to the exchange that surprised him. Lyris made faces at his silly poems and corrected his pronunciation of Illumina. She insisted it was pronounced with more dignity. Mateo taught her the concept of the awkward human grin that pretends to mean, "I'm charming," but is really saying, "Please do not look at my laundry." She, in turn, explained that ear color changes were a complex emotional language on her world. Lavender meant curiosity, molten red meant embarrassment, and a faint twinkling implied she might be considering something outrageously ridiculous. When he told her she could borrow a towel until she found her own sense of geographic orientation, her ears flushed an enchanting shade of embarrassed comet. She laughed, which made the small hairs on his arms stand up with entirely inappropriate hope. Before she left, she paused. "Mateo Cade?" she said. "Yes. If you ever want to attend a demonstration, the quiet kind, not the clandestine, look me up. Humans are interesting up close." He considered the offer the way someone considers an unexpected tax refund. "I think I'd like that," he admitted. She nodded, gave him a little bow that felt like permission to be ridiculous, and slipped back out into the hallway. The door closed with a sleepy sigh, and the apartment resumed its usual ambiance. Rubber ducks in judgment, the faint echo of a playlist about to resume, and Mateo standing in the middle of his kitchen wearing a towel and a drastically fuller head of possibilities. He laughed to himself, an odd small sound that meant something had shifted. Somewhere in the city, a maintenance drone hummed an advertising jingle, and a neighbor's faceless camera, set to modesty mode because modern paranoia is a type of courtesy, recorded a silhouette at the door, a flash of brilliant ears, and a towel heroically held like a flag. The camera would blur their faces into tasteful anonymity. The algorithm would subtitle the awkward silence with something like shuffling noise, and the universe, satisfied, would begin to rearrange the rest of its jokes around them. Mateo dried his hair, hummed a tune from his Do Not Forget playlist, and thought about one simple fact. Someone with ears like that had seen him, towel, ducks and all, and had decided to laugh. For him, that felt like an invitation to something both foolish and wonderful. He padded to the shelf, adjusted the rubber duck's positions for morale, and for reasons he could not entirely explain even to himself, left the door slightly ajar. Mateo Cade had never been good at defining relationships, mostly because he was still trying to define himself. Freelance creative technologist sounded glamorous until you realized it meant makes coffee, edits, add copy, and occasionally fixes vending machines that play breakup songs. His last attempt at romance had ended with his date calling him too literally romantic, which was fair considering he had once compared her laugh to subatomic resonance. So when Lyris Voss, the alien intern with diplomatic ears and the memory of his towel, messaged him 3 days after the incident, his brain didn't think date. It thought post-traumatic embarrassment management. Her message was efficient, as if written by a committee of etiquette experts and war strategists. Lyris, we should meet. Mateo. To discuss towel protocol. Lyris. To recalibrate misunderstandings. Mateo. Sounds like lunch. Lyris. Excellent. 1,300 hours memory market. Bring your humor. Mateo wasn't sure if bring your humor was a euphemism, a threat, or a cultural tradition. He brought it anyway, along with deodorant, a clean shirt, and precisely no expectations. The memory market was one of those places that made humans nostalgic for things they never experienced. Vendors sold bottled feelings, AI-generated déjà vu, and customized holograms of moments you wish had gone better. The air smelled of fried synth meat and regret, and the crowd shimmered with augmented reality filters that made everyone look slightly more interesting than they really were. Hovering signs flashed, "Get your childhood smell in a jar," and therapy while you shop. Lyris stood near the center of it all, luminous as a glitch in reality. The crowd naturally parted around her, not out of fear, but a collective uncertainty about how to share physical space with someone who looked like an interstellar supermodel. Her hair fell like silver smoke. Her cloak shimmered with holographic embroidery, and her posture suggested equal parts confidence and curiosity. Mateo spotted her immediately and cursed quietly for not wearing something cooler than his "I like coffee" t-shirt. She turned, eyes brightening when she saw him, and her ears flicked upward. It was strangely disarming, like watching someone blush with their body. "Mateo Cade," she said as he approached. "You came. 90% habit," he said. 10% curiosity. 2% hoping this isn't an ambush. "If it were an ambush," she said, deadpan, "you'd already be inside a portable black hole of mild inconvenience." He blinked. "See, I don't know if that's flirting or a threat, but I kind of like it either way." Her smile deepened, a subtle curl that felt dangerous in the best way. "You humans flirt so easily. On my world, courtship requires paperwork and 2 witnesses. I've dated people like that," he said, grinning. "Usually accountants." They found a food stall run by an old synth robot named Marv, who wore a chef's hat and had the personality of a retired stand-up comedian. 2 nostalgia specials, it said, slapping down 2 steaming empanadas that glowed faintly pink. 1 human, 1 non-human. "Try not to destroy reality this time." Lyris picked up her empanada and inspected it with academic interest. "It's warm." "Why?" "Because," Mateo said, "warmth is part of the experience." "Comfort food." She took a bite, then froze. Her ears twitched, then flattened slightly. "It's emotional. It's supposed to taste like a memory," Mateo said. "Mine tastes like being 12 and realizing my favorite cartoon character was a villain." "You?" Lyris looked down at hers, eyes distant. "Mine tastes like rain on metal." The sound before leaving home. Mateo didn't know how to reply to that, so he took a huge bite of his and said, "Mine also tastes like panic attacks." She laughed, an involuntary sound, light and genuine. Her laughter drew curious looks from nearby shoppers, but she didn't seem to care. They sat at a small table surrounded by neon signs and the hum of 20 competing music streams. Conversation came surprisingly easy, like 2 radio signals accidentally syncing frequencies. Lyris told him about her work at Orbital Fringe Media, where her job was to study human communication, patterns, and identify meme-worthy linguistic clusters. Mateo said his last freelance job had been writing ad copy for a smart toaster that insulted you into eating healthier. She found this fascinating. "So your machines insult you on purpose," she said. "And you pay them?" "It's capitalism," he said. "We pay for abuse and call it innovation." "That's darkly impressive." She bit her empanada again, then frowned. "My translator is uncertain. Is capitalism a type of religion?" "Basically," he said. "The kind where the gods charge rent." They both laughed. It was easy, disarming laughter. the kind that smooths out every awkward edge of a new connection. Lyris was more open now, less formal. Her gestures had softened. Her ears shifted between pale lavender and amused pink, which he was starting to recognize as her version of a smile. At one point she leaned forward and whispered, "Your species is oddly charming." "Do all humans make this much noise while being sincere?" "Only the hot ones," he said without thinking. Her ears flared red. "That was unexpected. Sorry," he said, suddenly aware he might have just flirted with an interstellar ambassador. "Was that inappropriate?" "On my planet," she said, "that would qualify as an early marriage proposal." "Oh," Mateo said. "Well, in that case, I take it back. I'm not ready to share my streaming subscriptions." She grinned, sharp and delighted. "A shame. I was curious about your content preferences." They spent another hour wandering the market, testing memory samples, and laughing at the absurdity of it all. Lyris tried Childhood Beach Day, and immediately demanded to know why sand existed. Mateo tried First Kiss and regretted everything when he started laughing halfway through. They discovered that her favorite earth smell was petrichor, and that she hated anything grape-flavored. He learned that her people considered puns a form of public art and that sarcasm was taught in schools as a defensive skill. By the time the artificial dusk lights dimmed, they were walking side by side, conversation drifting toward quieter things. She asked him if humans feared the dark. He said only the kind that asked questions. She told him her home planet's sky was full of sound, that silence there meant something had gone wrong. He told her about lying awake at night, listening to the city hum and pretending it was alive. When they reached the street where their transport pods waited, Lyris turned to him. "This was unexpectedly pleasant," she said. "I didn't mean for it to feel like a date," he offered. She paused, ears flicking in that endearingly uncertain way. "Yes, that," he shrugged. "That's okay. Half the best dates start by mistake." She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle she might enjoy solving. "You are very strange, Mateo Kade. I've been told it's my best feature." She stepped closer, close enough for him to smell something faintly electric in the air, like ozone and citrus. "Next time," she said softly, "I'll bring the towel." He blinked, processing the statement a full 2 seconds late. "Wait, was that a joke?" Her smile was wickedly slow. "You told me to bring my humor." And just like that, she stepped into her hovering transport pod, its lights washing her in blue glow, and disappeared into the traffic lanes above the neon skyline. Mateo stood there, soaked in confusion and laughter, and muttered to himself, "She's either flirting with me or planning an intergalactic lawsuit." Either way, he couldn't wait for next time. Mateo Cade never thought romance would come with a PDF, yet there he was, sitting cross-legged on his couch at 2 a.m., wearing mismatched socks and staring at a 47-page interspecies legal document titled Cohabitation and Mutual Privacy Agreement, Human Voss Edition. Lyris had insisted on it. "Your species is spontaneous," she had said, in that tone that managed to sound like both admiration and critique. "I need boundaries." "You need insurance," Mateo had replied. "I have towels." She didn't laugh. She just smiled. That careful, diplomatic smile that made him feel like a misbehaving schoolboy in a sci-fi courtroom. The negotiation, they met in his kitchenette, which was also his dining area, workspace, and emotional breakdown corner. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and mild panic. Lyra sat upright, posture perfect, scrolling through a holographic tablet. Mateo, meanwhile, wielded a pen like a weapon against bureaucracy. "All right," she said, tapping the screen. Clause 1, Personal Territories. The shower area belongs exclusively to the human. The adjacent drying zone remains neutral territory. "Wait," he said. "What's the drying zone?" "The area you call a towel graveyard," he winced. "Fair." Clause 5, she continued. Noise levels. No human singing between the hours of 0200 and 600. It interferes with my REM symbiosis. Mateo raised a hand. Counter clause. No alien throat humming during my morning coffee. It gives me flashbacks to Gregorian chants. Her ears twitched, a sure sign she was amused. Noted. Clause 9. Shared food storage. I will not refrigerate living organisms unless consented to in writing. Hold on. He squinted. That's a clause you've used before, isn't it? She coughed politely. My last roommate was carnivorous. By the time they reached Clause 20, Romantic boundaries and cohabitation scenarios. Both were leaning dangerously close to each other across the table, surrounded by coffee mugs, pens, and laughter. "So," he said, tapping the text, "no romantic advances without prior mutual declaration and 3 days' notice?" "That seems clinical. It's traditional," she said. "We don't do casual courtship. We file it. That explains your people's 0% divorce rate and 400% paperwork rate." Her ears flushed lavender. "We prefer precision over drama." "Well," he said with a grin, "humans prefer drama over precision." They looked at each other for a long moment, the kind of moment that smells like burnt coffee and impending bad decisions. "Should we," she said carefully, "include an exception clause?" He smiled. "For what?" Her eyes flickered like starlight trapped in crystal. "For spontaneous cultural exchanges." They both knew what she meant. They both pretended not to. The signing ceremony, if there was a prize for making bureaucracy look romantic, they earned it that night. Matteo printed the document on actual paper, a rare luxury in a world that had moved beyond pulp, and Lyris insisted on sealing it with her ancestral stamp, which looked suspiciously like a glowing bottle cap. They signed side by side, the pen's digital ink shimmering faintly blue. "Congratulations," she said, straight-faced. "We are now legally entitled to annoy each other with mutual consent." He grinned. "Finally, a relationship status I can get behind." She tilted her head. "You're joking, but that's literally what my species calls a marriage license." Matteo nearly choked on his coffee. "What? Wait, you didn't just—" Her ears twitched wickedly. "Relax. I removed the subclause that binds us across lifetimes." He stared. "There was a subclause for that?" "Of course. We're very thorough." She was teasing him, and he loved it. That sharp-edged humor hidden under alien formality. Every word she spoke carried a hint of double meaning. Every look was a spark waiting to hit the oxygen of his curiosity. The failure, for exactly 6 hours. Their agreement worked flawlessly. Then at 8:03 a.m. the next morning, it collapsed spectacularly. Matteo had been asleep when the sound hit, a strange, vibrating harmony, like a choir of cats being exorcised through a speaker system. He stumbled out of bed, hair defying gravity, to find Lyris hovering 3 feet off the ground in the living room, surrounded by glowing orbs that pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. "Good morning," she said serenely, not opening her eyes. "What?" He squinted, shielding his eyes. "What in the intergalactic yoga hell is this?" "My morning recalibration," she said, eyes still closed. "Clause 18 allows for spiritual maintenance rituals. Not if they involve haunting my coffee machine." She lowered herself with deliberate grace, landing silently. "You humans are so delicate before caffeine, and you aliens are so loud before gravity." Their first domestic argument lasted 10 minutes, 3 apologies, and 1 near-fire alarm. It ended when she solemnly handed him a small cube that emitted the smell of roasted beans. "Peace offering," she said. "Caffeine crystal. From my home world." He sniffed it. "Is it edible?" "It's inhalable." He inhaled. The cube exploded into a puff of cosmic smoke and euphoria. He sneezed. She giggled. They both ended up laughing so hard that the coffee machine joined in by short-circuiting. By evening, they were drafting Amendment 1, no levitation before breakfast. Domestic diplomacy, living together, became a masterclass in chaos management. Matteo discovered that Lyris labeled everything. The fridge was covered in sticky holographic tags. Do not lick. Sentient. Temporarily dead. Her tea collection took up half the pantry and smelled like lightning and mint. Lyris, in turn, learned that Matteo could not cook without setting off at least 1 alarm. He had a superstition about the microwave, "It judges me," and believed firmly that spaghetti sauce tasted better when accompanied by emotional breakdowns. Their dynamic was a delicate ecosystem of tolerance, humor, and mutual curiosity. When Lyris used his toothbrush to clean a sensor drone, he responded by leaving sarcastic sticky notes everywhere. Clause 7 violation. My toothbrush did not consent to robotics. She retaliated by renaming his smart fridge Judge Fridge Cade and programming it to give him daily evaluations. Breakfast choices, poor. Romantic prospects, questionable. Emotional maturity, pending. By the end of week 1, the agreement had evolved from a set of rules into an ongoing comedy routine. The incident with the warp pod. Everything truly fell apart the night she brought home Glip. Glip was a warp pod, a small, floating, semi-sentient blob that resembled a jellyfish trying to get a tax refund. It emitted a low, soothing hum and followed Lyris like a loyal balloon. "This is Glip," she said proudly. "My emotional support warp pod." Mateo blinked. "Your what?" "Clause 12 allows for emotional companions. It does not allow for things that hover near my bed and watch me dream." "Glip means no harm." Glip blinks in Morse code. "Lyris, I think it's judging me." Glip blinked once. "I rest my case," Mateo muttered. But by the end of the week, he'd grown weirdly fond of the creature. He even caught himself talking to it when Lyris wasn't home. "You ever feel like she's the adult in this apartment, Glip?" Blink. "Yeah, me too." The understanding every failed clause became a new inside joke. Every irritation mutated into intimacy. They fought, teased, and apologized like professionals, sometimes using actual contracts. Clause 44. No silent treatment longer than 12 hours. Clause 45. Kiss exemptions permitted under emotional duress. Yes, there were kisses. It started as a joke, a fine, let's amend the clause, kind of kiss, and somehow ended with both of them breathless, disoriented, and laughing like they'd just survived a near-death experience in low orbit. She touched his cheek afterward, tracing the outline of his jaw with careful curiosity. "Humans are softer than they look," she whispered. "And you," he said, smiling, "are a terrible roommate." Agreed. Her ears shimmered violet. That color he'd learned meant satisfaction, and with that, the roommate agreement officially became what every great romantic contract eventually becomes: irrelevant, broken, and utterly beautiful in its failure. The human world had two great equalizers, gravity and the internet. Gravity kept your feet on the ground. The internet made sure you regretted almost every decision that involved a camera. Mateo Katie had learned to live with gravity. The internet, however, was still a cosmic mystery, one that was about to chew up his quiet life and spit it out with millions of likes. It started innocently enough. It was a Thursday, which meant Lyris was experimenting with domestic culture. Her current obsession, human desserts. She had decided to perfect a dish called soufflé of sentiment, which she'd found in a defunct Earth cookbook. Mateo, as the designated taste tester/lab rat, had no idea what he was signing up for. The recipe required whipped gas, condensed sweetness, and something called emotional stability at 400 Kelvin. The last part was already doomed. Lyris wore an apron that read, "Kiss the cook, if you dare," in alien glyphs. Mateo wore oven mitts and existential dread. "This is either going to be amazing," he said, "or we're going to become a headline." Lyris flicked her wrist and ignited a floating flame orb. "Confidence, Mateo. Cooking is just chemistry with better lighting. Tell that to the last time you vaporized oatmeal. That was sabotage," she said calmly. The oats had intent. The scene might have ended there. Two mismatched roommates playing kitchen roulette, if not for the silent observer mounted in the corner of the room, the faceless security cam, model VIZ Safe 3000, designed to protect your privacy through algorithmic blurring. It had one job, record for insurance purposes: upload nothing publicly and make everything look like a tasteful documentary. It was faceless, anonymous, modest, until the app updated. The new version came with a feature called Auto Trend, a cheerful disaster of AI design that analyzed emotional resonance and auto-posted any engaging moment to the shared building feed. It was supposed to detect fights, romantic gestures, and disasters. It had the IQ of a toaster and the social boundaries of a drunk gossip. They were halfway through whisking the volatile dessert when the catastrophe struck. "Faster," Lyris instructed, hovering over the bowl like a general over a war map. "You must aerate the emotion." "I'm aerating." "I've got maximum emotion here." Mateo's arm moved at the speed of panic. The mixture hissed ominously. Lyris frowned, her ears twitching. "It's unstable. Like me," he muttered. A small pop came from the bowl. Then another. Then, in the way of all great scientific failures, the mixture detonated. A gentle explosion of glittering pink foam and sticky sweetness that splattered both of them from head to toe. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of Lyris's laughter. Bright, unrestrained, musical. Her ears glowed crimson from both shock and amusement. Mateo, dripping in alien dessert, blinked through the sugar. "I think it's done," he said. "I think you're done," she replied, barely holding back laughter. He took one cautious step toward her, holding the whisk like a weapon. "Don't you dare, Mateo," she warned, laughing harder. "Do not—" Too late. He flicked a glob of pink foam at her. It hit her squarely on the cheek. There was a split second of silence, then retaliation. She scooped a handful from the counter and launched it back. He ducked, missed, slipped, and grabbed the edge of the counter for balance. She lunged forward to steady him, and in the kind of slapstick timing only the universe could choreograph, their heads collided, not hard, but enough to tilt gravity in favor of romance. For a moment, everything slowed. The world narrowed to the scent of caramelized sugar, the hum of the lights, and the closeness of her breath against his. Her ears flicked once, the color deepening from scarlet to a shy, glowing violet. He should have stepped back, should have made a joke, but the air between them was thick and electric, and somehow, impossibly, they kissed. It wasn't planned, wasn't cinematic, but it was real, soft, awkward, messy, and entirely human, or at least 50% human. 50% intergalactic accident, and the faceless camera caught all of it. The VizSafe 3000 analyzed the footage and came to the worst possible conclusion. Engagement spike detected. Uploading for communal positivity. By the time they realized what had happened, it was too late. The video, titled automatically as Faceless Couple's Sweet Accident, Love and Soufflé, had already reached 120,000 views on the building's local feed. Mateo found out through his neighbor's doorbell. He opened his messages to a flood of emojis, compliments, and one unsettling comment that read, "That chemistry though, Lyris burst into the room seconds later, holding her tablet like it had personally betrayed her. "Mateo Cade," she hissed. "Why is my face trending?" "You're faceless," he said. "The algorithm blurs everything." "It does not blur my ears," she snapped. "They are practically glowing billboards of emotional compromise." He winced. "Okay, yeah, that's fair. But look, it's kind of sweet, right? People think it's romantic." She gave him a stare that could have vaporized small planets. "I am not your viral marketing opportunity. Technically," he muttered, "you're ours." Her glare intensified. "You have 20 seconds to fix this before I file a galactic privacy complaint." Fixing it turned out to be impossible. The building AI refused to take the video down. It claimed it was generating unprecedented tenant engagement. Worse, the clip had been flagged by Orbital Fringe Media's auto-trending algorithm, meaning it was now in the queue to go public on Planet Feed, the galaxy's most addictive social app. For 2 days, Mateo and Lyris tried every trick they could think of. They flooded the metadata with fake tags like educational video, fire safety tutorial, and advanced dessert physics. None worked. At one point, Mateo tried appealing to the AI directly. "Look, Viz, we didn't consent to VizSafe 3000. Consent detected retroactively." Emotional authenticity achieved. "Congratulations," he groaned. "I'm arguing with a toaster that ships us." Lyris paced the apartment, muttering in her native language. "This will reach my supervisor. My internship will be terminated. My ears are trending." Mateo rubbed his temples. "It's just a faceless clip. People don't even know it's you." She shot him a look. "Mateo, you literally said my name in the video." He blinked. "Oh," twice. "Oh no." She slumped onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. "On my planet, public affection is considered very intimate." "Yeah, we have that here too," he said softly. "Except we monetize it." For a long moment, neither spoke. The apartment smelled faintly of burnt sugar and bad decisions. Then, quietly, Lyris began to laugh. It started as a nervous giggle, then built into a genuine fit of laughter that filled the room like music. "What's so funny?" he asked. She lifted her head, her eyes glowing with mischief. "You, us, the absurdity of it. We signed a 47-page privacy agreement, and now half the city thinks we're a cooking couple." He smiled, relief washing through him. "Well, look on the bright side. Free publicity." She snorted. "You are lucky I find you adorable." "You do?" I said lucky, not correct. When the video finally hit Planet Feed, it exploded. Commenters dubbed them the Faceless Lovers. Memes were born. Someone remixed the sound of their dessert explosion into a pop song. A cosmetics brand released alien blush the Lyris Red. Even Glip, her emotional support warp pod, got its own fan page. At first, they panicked. Then they adapted. They decided to own the narrative. Sort of. They filmed a follow-up clip, How to Accidentally Trend Without Dying, F-tier Dessert Physics. They kept it faceless, playful, and chaotic. Lyris introduced herself only as Alien Roommate Number 1, while Mateo adopted the alias The Human Menace. The world loved it. Within a week, they had 1 million followers and enough ad revenue to cover rent for a year. And somewhere between the laughter, the late-night editing, and the shared inside jokes about intergalactic copyright law, something changed. The laughter wasn't just nervous anymore. The looks lingered a little longer. The accidental touches stayed accidental only by mutual pretense. One night, after posting another faceless video titled Things You Shouldn't Microwave Again, Lyris leaned against the counter watching him. Her ears glowed that soft, unguarded violet, the color he'd come to crave. "Mateo," she said quietly, "if we're going to be public accidents, we might as well be intentional about it." He blinked. "You mean?" She stepped closer, close enough for him to smell ozone and sugar. Clause 45, kiss exemptions permitted under emotional duress. He grinned. "Remind me to never delete that clause." And this time, when they kissed, the camera stayed off. But both of them suspected it wouldn't have mattered, because some moments didn't need to be faceless to be unforgettable. Mateo Cade never imagined that faceless viral alien romance would become a genre, let alone one he was accidentally starring in. The whole city now recognized the blurry silhouettes of the Human Menace and Alien Roommate Number 1. There were mugs, fan edits, AI-generated wedding invitations, and at least one conspiracy theory that claimed their love story was an elaborate PR stunt by the Interplanetary Council to promote co-species diplomacy. He and Lyris had taken it all with dark humor. At first, then came the brand deals. Lyris's inbox flooded with offers, energy drinks that glow like her ears, appliance ads featuring our favorite cooking couple, even a proposal for a faceless lover's hollow sitcom titled Love Without Eyebrows. Mateo had laughed so hard he nearly choked on his coffee. Lyris, however, had been less amused. "I did not come to Earth to become a meme," she said one night, arms crossed, ears flaring coral pink. He nodded sympathetically. "Yeah, but you've got to admit, the mugs are kind of cute." "Mateo," she said slowly. "One of them says stirred, not blurred. That's not cute." "That's horrifying." "It's also accurate." She threw a pillow at him. It hit him square in the face, releasing a faint puff of alien-scented perfume that smelled like ozone and rebellion. He coughed, laughed, and said, "You know, for someone who hates attention, you're incredibly photogenic for a blur." She rolled her eyes, which, even blurred, could probably stop traffic. "You flirt like it's a survival instinct." "Because it is," he said. "You have no idea how many people comment on your ears. I'm competing with an entire fandom." Her ears twitched, glowing faintly lavender. Curiosity. "You're jealous?" He hesitated, then smirked. "Only a little. Maybe 60%. "Okay, fine. 80%. Lyris tilted her head, that same mischievous gleam lighting her eyes. "Don't be jealous, Mateo. The fandom can admire. But I'm the one who gets your coffee disasters and sleep hair diplomacy." "Sleep hair diplomacy?" "Yes. Every morning, it negotiates peace treaties with gravity." Their relationship, if that's what it was now, existed somewhere between romantic comedy and interstellar cultural exchange. They weren't quite dating, weren't quite roommates, and weren't quite ready to admit that both categories had melted into something softer, stranger, and beautifully unscripted. They had a rhythm. Lyris still labeled the refrigerator shelves, "Do not freeze the sentient sauce," while Mateo continued his campaign of sticky notes. Clause 12, no midnight telepathy without warning. Their bickering had become an art form, sharp and flirtatious, equal parts affection and mock warfare. Their inside jokes had evolved into an entire language. A raised eyebrow meant you're impossible. A twitching ear meant I'm pretending not to be charmed. A faint hum from Lyris's throat meant I forgive you, but also, you're an idiot. And then came the night. That changed everything. It started as another content session. They were filming a segment for their faceless channel called Cooking with Chaos Galactic Edition. The concept was simple. Lyris would teach Mateo how to prepare a dish from her planet, and Mateo would fail in increasingly creative ways. The camera, now strictly offline after the souffle incident, sat on a shelf, recording only for their private archive. "This dish," Lyris said seriously, holding up a luminous green fruit that looked like a cross between a mango and a grenade, "is called Xenophi. Handle with care. Define care," Mateo said, reaching for it, like you would a delicate emotion. So clumsily, she shot him a glare. "One more joke like that, and I'll make you eat raw Xenophi pulp. It induces temporary telepathy," he grinned. "You say that like it's a bad thing. Trust me," she said, slicing the fruit cleanly. "You don't want to hear what I'm thinking right now. Try me." Her ears flicked. "You wouldn't survive it." There it was again, that pulse of electricity, that teasing line between banter and confession. He wasn't sure who leaned first, but the distance between them closed like it had been waiting to disappear. Her hand brushed his wrist, and he felt the faint static hum of her biofield. He shivered. She noticed. "Your nervous system is so dramatic," she murmured. "And yours is showing off," he whispered back. For a moment the kitchen lights dimmed. Maybe a power surge. Maybe them. The city's glow painted her silver hair in gold. Her pupils widened, reflecting him like a mirror caught in motion. Then, of course, the fruit exploded. A burst of green vapor filled the room, and suddenly Mateo could hear her voice inside his mind. Not her speaking voice, but the quiet, private one that existed behind her careful diplomacy. "He's infuriating," it said, "and kind and reckless. And I want to kiss him again." He froze. She froze. Both of them stared horrified, as if they'd just opened the same forbidden file. "Did you just—" "Yes. You can hear me." "Yes. Don't think anything weird." He blurted out mentally, "I already am." He winced. "Oh, that's just great. Perfect. Telepathic embarrassment, every introvert's nightmare." She smirked, though her ears were glowing the shade of absolute mortification. "I told you to handle it carefully." "Yeah, well, now you know what's going on in here," he said, tapping his head. "Welcome to chaos." Her smile softened. "It's loud, but not unpleasant." They stood there, breathing the same sugar-scented air, sharing thoughts they didn't mean to share, and laughing helplessly because there was no other way to survive that level of vulnerability. Eventually, the telepathic link faded. The lights flickered back to normal, but something between them stayed altered, quieter, deeper. Mateo finally broke the silence. "So that happened." Lyris tilted her head. "Clause 45 may need expansion," he chuckled. "To include telepathic foreplay?" She grinned. "You learn quickly." Later that week, Lyris received a holocall from her mother. Mateo didn't know aliens could experience parental judgment until that moment. The projection filled the living room with the image of a regal woman with a crown of living crystal and the disapproving aura of attacks. "Auditor, daughter," the hologram intoned. "You are trending on 17 planets." Lyris froze mid-sip of her tea. "Mother, I can explain." The hologram held up a clawed hand. "Explain why you were kissing a human culinary hazard on camera?" Mateo choked on air. "Hi, ma'am. Big fan of your daughter's, oxygen usage." Lyris's mother stared at him like she was deciding whether to vaporize or adopt him. "Does he always speak this way?" "Unfortunately," Lyris muttered. The conversation that followed was an intergalactic blend of cultural misunderstanding, unintentional innuendo, and dark comedy. Lyris's mother demanded a compatibility report. Mateo offered to make coffee. Lyris groaned so loudly the warp pod sulked. By the end of the call, her mother's hologram sighed and said, "Fine. If you insist on entanglement, at least make it profitable. The council loves a good love story." When the connection ended, Lyris dropped her head into her hands. "She just turned our relationship into a tax deduction." Mateo grinned. "Welcome to humanity." She glared up at him. "You're enjoying this?" "Absolutely. But to be fair, I never thought I'd get in trouble for being too romantic with an alien." "Too visible," she corrected. "Your kisses are apparently a matter of public record." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Then maybe we should give them something worth recording." Her ears flared violet again. "You're impossible. And you," he said softly, "are incredible." She tried to roll her eyes but failed halfway through, smiling despite herself. "You're lucky you make me laugh. That's my strategy. It's working dangerously well. Their romance, Once accidental, had grown teeth and warmth, a living, breathing absurdity that neither of them could explain to anyone without sounding delusional. They laughed too much, argued too often, and loved in ways that made logic irrelevant. They weren't perfect. They were just possible, and in a universe where love could trend on 17 planets, that was miracle enough.